Welcome to Anews. I'm Umar Taslim and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. The conflict in Gaza has entered a critical stage. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have announced a peace plan that demands Hamas release hostages within 72 hours, while offering prisoner exchanges and promises of reconstruction. Hamas has yet to respond, and tensions are rising as a massive aid flotilla carrying hundreds of activists approaches Gaza, risking confrontation at sea. With more than 66,000 people killed, displacement at record levels, and growing international recognition of Palestine, the stakes for peace and stability in the region have never been higher.
Turkey's National Security Council convened under the leadership of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Tuesday. Top Turkish civil and military officials discussed the internal and external security challenges the country faces during the critical meeting.
The actors and issues posing a threat to Syria's territorial integrity, unity, and sovereignty, as well as to Iraq's security, stability, and prosperity, were assessed. It was underlined that our support for the struggle against attempts to drag our neighbors into regional conflicts will continue to increase. Within the process to be reinforced under the goal of a terror-free region, it was emphasized that no manifestation of terrorism would be allowed in our neighboring geography, and that expansionism based on a terror ground would be categorically rejected.
The Council strongly criticized Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza, drawing attention to what it called illegitimate policies that have caused a humanitarian catastrophe and deaths from starvation.
It was stated that halting the genocide and ensuring accountability for those responsible has become a shared responsibility of all humanity, and the international community was urgently called to take action and to concretize the will demonstrated within the United Nations. Our readiness to contribute to every positive step taken toward the establishment of a just and lasting peace was expressed.
On Cyprus, the National Security Council reiterated Turkey's unwavering support for a two-state solution based on the sovereign equality and equal international status of the Turkish Cypriots.
On our national cause, the Cyprus issue, our support for the two-state solution model based on the recognition of the sovereign equality and equal international status of the Turkish Cypriots was underlined, and it was noted that our country will maintain its determined stance against any step that could negatively affect the atmosphere of peace on the island.
The meeting concluded with a strong message of Turkey's resolve to safeguard its national interests and contribute to regional and global stability.
The current situation regarding the Russia-Ukraine war was evaluated. Concern was voiced over developments pointing to the risk of the conflict spreading, and it was stated that our country is prepared to assume greater responsibility for the establishment of peace. The normalization process with Armenia was discussed. The importance of the transportation line that will enable unimpeded access between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan, bringing outcomes beneficial to all countries in the region, was stressed, along with our determination for the establishment of final peace.
Welcome back to the program. Mustafa Kojakanar, welcome to the program.
Thanks for hosting me, Omar.
Mustafa, let's start with Turkish President Erdogan's views on the latest peace plan that President Trump has floated and has been accepted by Netanyahu as well. Now, Hamas is we're still waiting for a response from Hamas. Obviously, they have received it through Qatari and Egyptian negotiators. But how is the Turkish president and how is Turkey looking at this peace plan, Mustafa?
Omar, as you know, on Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House to exchange views on the latest security developments in the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza Strip. And following his meeting with Netanyahu, Trump announced 20-point so-called Gaza peace plan, and international community expressed its satisfaction with Trump's so-called Gaza peace plan. And within this context, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also praised his American counterpart Donald Trump's efforts to reach peace and stability stability in the Middle East, and he reiterated Turkey's strong support for Trump's Gaza peace plan. And yesterday we know that Turkish National Intelligence Chief Ibrahim Kalın went to Qatar to participate in the meeting with Hamas delegation, because right now it is up to Hamas to accept Trump-sponsored Gaza peace plan. But personally, I think that there are still many uncertainties about Palestinian sovereignty over Gaza. Yes, there are 20 points within Gaza peace plan, but these points are urging Hamas to dissolve itself and lay down their weapons. And we know that Hamas is indispensable part of the Gaza Strip, and in 2007 they won general elections in the Gaza Strip. But right now Hamas delegation is evaluating Trump's so-called Gaza peace plan, and all regional stakeholders are trying to mediate between Israel and Hamas. I think that right now Turkey, Qatar and Egypt are playing an important role in terms of facilitating the diplomatic negotiations between Hamas and Israeli decision makers. I hope that this plan will bring peace and stability to the Middle East, but personally, I think that the international community will be supposed to deal with the root causes of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Mustafa, now the Summit Flotilla, the global Summit Flotilla, it was attacked by Israeli vessels. Communication was cut off. Now it's not so far away from the occupied Gaza Strip, and there are more than 500 people, activists, volunteers, leaders from other groups from the civil society. Now, a few days ago, there was one of the vessels broke down, and the Turkish Navy helped that vessel. It provided aid. Now, tell me about those efforts, Mustafa, because President Erdogan has also spoken to the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez. He has said to him that Turkey supports Spain and Italy's assistance, and Turkey is also going to support those who are going towards the occupied Gaza Strip. Tell me more about these efforts, Mustafa. Why are they so important coming from the Turkish side?
Omar, right now, you know, humanitarian situation is deepening in the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza Strip, and starvation and malnutrition crises are gripping the occupied territory. And within this context, international criticism is mounting on Israel over the deteriorating humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. And despite setback, global flotilla is on its way towards Gaza, and they are trying to break Israeli blockade in the Gaza Strip. But we know that in the historical process, Israel is being accused of conducting state piracy in the international waters. And personally, I think that today or tomorrow, Israeli security forces will intercept global flotilla in international waters. And I think that Israeli decision makers will detain all the people in the global flotilla. As you know, there are many people coming from all around the world to show their solidarity with the Palestinian people living in the occupied Gaza Strip. And right now they are still going to Gaza to break the Israeli blockade. I think that international community is also praising global flotilla's efforts to mitigate the humanitarian crisis in the region. But I don't think that Israel will allow this flotilla to enter Gaza and to distribute the humanitarian aid packages. On the other hand, as you know, Turkish Navy also escorted some ships in the global flotilla, and Turkish Red Crescent also reiterated its strong support for humanitarian mission in terms of breaking the Israeli blockade in the Gaza Strip. As you mentioned, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan held a phone conversation with Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to increase the international awareness about the dire humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. I hope that Israel will find a common way or common sense with the international community to increase the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip.
Mustafa, let's talk about how Hamas is perceiving this proposal. Obviously, it has received it, but it has not released a statement regarding the peace plan. Now, one of the points that's in the 20-point proposal, the Gaza peace plan proposal, it says that once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. But there's no clear point in how Hamas or some other authority is going to run Gaza. Obviously, we know there's a transitional authority. Tony Blair is a part of it. Donald Trump will also be leading it, but there's no clarity. Tell me how will Hamas respond to these points, Mustafa?
Mar, as we mentioned right now, Hamas delegation is evaluating Trump's so-called Gaza peace plan, and according to sources on the ground, reliable sources, they are claiming that Hamas is leaning to accept Trump's Gaza peace plan. But we mentioned that there are still many uncertainties about Palestinian sovereignty and Gaza's political future. Right now, they are talking about transactional government to run the Gaza Strip, and Trump is claiming that he will be president of transactional government, and Tony Blair will be in the technocrat government. But we know that Tony Blair has a bad reputation in the Middle East because in 2003, Blair, as a British Prime Minister, gave strong support for United States military operations in Iraq, and that is the reason why Tony Blair has a bad reputation in the region right now. I don't think that Palestinian people will welcome the technocrat government led by Tony Blair. But on the other hand, I can clearly say that both Trump and Netanyahu put Hamas in a very dangerous position, because right now, yes, they are discussing 20 points for Gaza's political future. But I think that if there is something wrong in the region and Israel will restart its attacks, they will blame Hamas for ongoing military offensive in the region. They will claim that we want a ceasefire, we want a peace deal, but Hamas doesn't accept it. I think that right now Hamas is in a very dangerous position for its political future. As we mentioned, Hamas is indispensable part of the Gaza Strip, but right now both the United States and Israel are calling upon Hamas to dissolve itself and lay down their weapons. Yes, right now Turkey, Qatar and Egypt are trying to play an important role in terms of dealing with the security issues in the region. I think that Hamas will be supposed to accept Trump's so-called Gaza peace plan, but I don't think that it will be beneficial for Palestinian political sovereignty.
Mustafa, talking about this plan, let's take a look at how the Israeli side is perceiving it, right? Because Netanyahu has said on multiple occasions that he wants no Hamas, no presence of Hamas in the occupied Gaza Strip. Hamas members will be exiled. That's the term that they've been using. Do you think that he has accepted this proposal because it is in the Israeli interests, or do you think that he's actually looking to end the war in Gaza?
Umar, we are always talking about that. If we want to understand Israel's ongoing military operations in the Middle East, we have to analyze the motivations behind Israeli decision makers. And personally, I think that there are two motivations behind Israel's military campaign in the region. One motivation is security architecture in the Middle East, and the second motivation is the internal political dynamics within Israel. Because right now we are always saying that Israeli decision makers have been striving for making Israel the only regional hegemon in the Middle East, and they are not taking aim at Palestinian people living in the Gaza Strip. They are also targeting other countries in the region. Israeli security forces have been regularly attacking Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, and recently Qatar. And it is clearly showing that Israel is pursuing expansionist geopolitical agenda in the region. And right now they are saying Hamas is posing a huge threat to Israel's national security. But if Hamas decides to dissolve itself and lay down its weapons, I think that Israel will fabricate another so-called national security threat to its security with the aim of making Israel the only regional hegemon in the Middle East. First, I can clearly say that if Hamas decides to dissolve itself, I think that Israel will find another excuse to start its invasion in the occupied Palestinian territory, Gaza Strip. And if we want to talk about the second motivation, I think we have to delve into the political dynamics within Israel, because right now no one is expressing its satisfaction with the Israeli war cabinet. Everyone is criticizing both Netanyahu and his war cabinet, and we know that there is still ongoing corruption trial against Netanyahu, and Israeli people are regularly calling Netanyahu as a crime minister instead of prime minister, and it is clearly showing that there is a threat in Israel for Netanyahu's political future, and Israeli decision makers, Netanyahu in particular, right now think that the continued military operations are the best options to keep Netanyahu politically alive in the region. If we want to bring peace and stability in the Middle East, I think we have to eliminate these root causes of the conflict. Right now, pro-Palestinian movement is gaining momentum worldwide, and everyone is recognizing the Palestinian statehood. Turkey is always advocating for a Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Yes, last week on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, many Western countries recognized the Palestinian statehood, but no one is talking about the borders for Palestine or Israel. No one is talking about Palestinian army situation. No one is talking about Palestinian sovereignty. I think that international community will be supposed to clarify its position in terms of ensuring long-standing peace, stability and tranquility in the Middle East. Otherwise, we will continue to see the Israeli aggression in the region.
Mustafa, like you said, there's no army, there's no clear, we can't see the Palestinian state in existence right now. Obviously, other countries, Western countries have been, they've been recognizing the state of Palestine. For example, France, Australia, the UK, Belgium, Spain, Portugal as well. Now, Syria is also in a similar position, don't you think so? Because at the beginning of this year, we saw how the Assad regime was defeated, and now there's a new government. Do you think that Syria will join the Abraham Accords at some point? Because the Syrian president says, we will negotiate with the Israelis. And Israelis say that, okay, fine. We've seen over the past few months as well how Israel has been attacking Syrian territory, even attacks inside Damascus, the capital. So do you think that they could have negotiations at this point, considering the conditions of the country, or the people, or the government? Do you think that they will negotiate, and Israel is trying to bring Syria into the Abraham Accords? Because look at the reaction from other countries as well.
Well, during his first presidency, Donald Trump initiated Abraham Accords to normalize the bilateral or multilateral relationships between Israel and Arab countries, and some Arab nations, including United Arab Emirates, normalized its bilateral relationships with Israel. And during his second term, Trump is also pursuing for normalization between Arab countries and Israel. And as you know, Israel and Syria have been at odds against each other for decades. And in the Middle East, we can call them arch rivals. But geopolitical situation totally changed in Syria last December, and new Syrian government led by Ahmed al-Shara has been pursuing important steps in terms of normalizing the political situation in the country. As you know, in May, U.S. President Donald Trump came to the Middle East to visit 3 Arab Gulf countries, and on the sidelines of the Gulf Cooperation Council summit in Saudi Arabia's capital Riyadh, Trump met with Ahmed al-Shara to discuss the normalization talks between the United States and Syria. And following his meeting with al-Shara, Trump decided to lift international American sanctions on Syria, because right now we know that Syria desperately needs international help to rebuild and reconstruct the war-torn country. And I think that right now the United States is expecting some concrete steps from Syria to make sure that Syria will rebuild itself. And one of the expectations is that I think joining the Abraham Accords, but I don't think that Syria will be eager to join Abraham Accords in terms of normalizing its bilateral relationships with Israel, because Israel is still regularly targeting Syria's military infrastructure. They are stirring protests among Druze community to endanger Syria's political stability and economic prosperity. I think that based on the realities on the ground, Syria will not be eager to normalize its bilateral relationships with Israel under the Abraham Accords.
Musa, there's one other country which could be a part of the Abraham Accords, but the rulers there say that the state of Palestine must be recognized. There should be a two-state solution, and that's Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was also, Trump was also looking to put Saudi Arabia into those accords, to make Saudi Arabia part of those accords. And the Turkish foreign minister is in Saudi Arabia today. What could be on his agenda, Mustafa, when he meets his counterparts? Do you think, obviously, this is going to dominate the agenda, the war in Gaza? What else could he discuss with his counterparts there?
Well, right now, the Trump administration is pressuring all Arab countries to normalize their bilateral relationships with Israel. And Saudi Arabia is one of these countries, but Saudi Arabian officials reiterate at every opportunity that the Gulf country will not normalize its bilateral ties with Israel under the current circumstances. And as you mentioned, right now, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is set to pay an official visit to Saudi Arabia. As you know, since the very beginning of the crisis, humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, Turkey has been always calling for regional solutions for regional problems. Within this context, both Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan have been regularly holding face-to-face meetings or phone conversations with their regional counterparts. I think that today the so-called Gaza peace plan and Middle East region's political future will be on the agenda. I hope that all regional countries will take Turkey's security demands into an account if they want to see peace and stability in the Middle East.
Mustafa Kocakan'a, thank you for that analysis. I'll be right back with you.
Thank you much.
U.S. President Donald Trump warned Hamas of a very sad end if the group rejects the U.S.-backed peace plan for Gaza, giving them 3 to 4 days to respond.
You know, with Hamas, we want very simple. We want the hostages back immediately, and we want some good behavior. And, you know, it's pretty simple. You don't get simpler.
US President Donald Trump gave Hamas 3 to 4 days on Tuesday to accept a US-backed peace plan for Gaza. And he warned of, quote, a very sad end if the group rejected the proposal, which he said was close to ending the 2-year-old conflict. Mediators Qatar and Egypt shared the 20-point plan with Hamas, which was not involved in negotiations, late on Monday. That was after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had appeared alongside Trump at the White House and endorsed the document.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims.
An official briefed on the talks told Reuters Hamas would review the proposal, quote, in good faith and provide a response. However, it calls on the group to disarm, which it has previously rejected. Many elements of the latest plan have been included in numerous ceasefire deals proposed over the last 2 years, including those accepted and then subsequently rejected by both Israel and Hamas. It envisions a ceasefire followed by the release within 72 hours of all remaining hostages, in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and the gradual withdrawal of Israeli forces. It points to a vague path towards Palestinian statehood, which Netanyahu has vowed never to let happen, but only once Gaza's redevelopment is well underway and the Palestinian Authority undertakes reforms. Oversight would fall to an international board of peace chaired by Trump, and including former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, according to the White House. A Palestinian official who did not want to be named said the proposal meant the full adoption of all Israeli conditions, quote, which do not grant the Palestinian people or the residents of the Gaza Strip any legitimate rights. Many in Gaza felt the same, like displaced Palestinian Nabil Awad.
This delegates all of the rights of the Palestinian people. It ends the Palestinian cause and at the same time will end the Palestinian population, or what's left of it.
Israel's military campaign in Gaza has killed more than 66,000 Palestinians, according to local health authorities, and displaced nearly everyone. The country has been accused by a UN Commission of Inquiry of committing genocide.
All of the Arab countries are signed up, the Muslim countries all signed up, Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas, and Hamas is either going to be doing it or not, and if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
Welcome back to the program. Joining us now from the French capital is Dr. Abdel Nour Toumi, a Mideast political analyst. Dr. Toumi, welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program.
Dr. Toumi, let's start with the 20-point peace plan, which has been introduced by Donald Trump. Israel has accepted it. We're waiting for the response from Hamas. What are your thoughts on the plan?
Actually, it's another and fair plan for the Palestinians. But in this context, I mean, one could even speak about the plan for the region and for the new Middle East that the Israeli Prime Minister wants to impose for the region. So in other terms, it's one gets lost in translation, meaning by that, I mean, we are in the 21st century and it's a quarter has passed of this century, and we, the observers and the analysts and even the historians are still, again, thinking when they saw this kind of an arrogant, scornful plan orchestrated by white men. And this is like a Balfour Declaration, Oslo Accord, Act 2, Iraq, what went wrong. So it's all a déjà vu all over again, a script. And this, sadly, is, again, addressed to the Palestinians, and even the Palestinians who have been fighting for their legitimate rights for a century. And again, I mean, this comes in light of course, of the ongoing carnage, and that is, I mean, followed by ethnic cleansing, starvation, and genocide, and all these are under the frame of war crimes. So the question is, I mean, when the Westerners, wake up and look at the Easterners as, again, I won't say they're siblings, but are as smart people. Because in this plan, I mean, the big missing are the Palestinians themselves. I mean, we saw, again, according to all these news reports, and coming from Western media outlets, that was orchestrated by three white men. I mean, the son-in-law of the U.S. president and his special Middle East envoy and a former UK prime minister. So again, it makes the entire people in the region, again, have this legitimate question, so when we will have our say, as if the Westerners didn't get anything from what happened on that dawn of October 7, 2023, in which it did, in fact, change the entire parameters and dynamic of the Middle East geopolitics.
Dr. Toomey, of course, we'll be marking the second year now. It's going to be the second year on the 7th of October. Now, the Gaza ministry says that 66,000 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied Gaza Strip, but then some scientific journals, some independent researchers have said that over 500,000 people could have been killed in Israel's war against the Palestinians in the occupied Gaza Strip. Now, when you look at the plan that has been introduced by the U.S. president, we can see that that Israel is not being held responsible, Who's going to be held responsible for the crimes? Where is the accountability? Because when we look at the points, we can just see that Israel is going to control Gaza even after ending the war. The security parameters are going to be there, and Hamas will not be there. So they haven't spoken about who will pay the reparations, who will be held accountable for these war crimes. What do you think about that?
That's exactly what is happening, and what happened with this unfair plan. And by the way, I was reading this morning, a report from the Financial Times that Arab leaders, who met with the U.S. President, Mr. Donald Trump, on site of the UN General Assembly 80th session, and this is not what happened. Actually, they handed to him a list of 6 points, including ending the war and the Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip, or any temptation, of course, Jewish construction of Jewish settlements, and of course not obliged displacement of the Palestinians from Gaza, and no annexation of the West Bank. And also, they even mentioned Israel has to stop its occupation on the Al-Aqsa Sharif and do not change the legal status of the holy sites in Al-Quds. So all these points, I looked carefully to the 20th point of the plan, but I didn't see anything of this. To the contrary, the Israeli Prime Minister, who is, by the way, under a warrant arrest issued by the ICC. Just after that joint press conference with the U.S. President, Mr. Donald Trump, and he came in with a video and he was speaking. Actually, he was jubilating, where he's not leaving Gaza, and he's not going to accept, insisting for the Palestinian states and so on. But all this, again, is, as you said, it's all about accountability and impunity. And now we are speaking about the day after. So let's talk about now, because the carnage and the genocide is still going on. The Palestinians are still bound at this moment. So this, again, when it comes to the accountability and the impunity, now it's, as I said, the Arab leaders and the Muslim leaders have leverage to pressure the U.S. president like they did in this mini summit last week in New York, and they can actually have their say and impose their view on the U.S. president that he will pressure the Israeli prime minister. But up until now, it continue. Like business as usual. We are talking like, as when we speak about Tony Blair. Frankly, it's like as if it's like, as I said, it's like nothing happened with the new Khan's project in the rush for the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and we also all the consequences of that policy. So now, when we speak about, we are in that equation of peace and war, that, peace, which means capitulation for the Westerners, and war, it means more suffering and anarchy for the people in the region.
Dr. Toubi, what could be the response from Arab leaders? Because do you think that they're okay with rebuilding Gaza and paying for all that reconstruction when Israel was the one which devastated the occupied Gaza Strip? Why are the Arab leaders, why are the Islamic leaders and Muslim countries and Arab countries, Muslim majority countries, why are they having to pay for the reconstruction of the occupied Gaza Strip? Don't you think that it should be the United States and Israel's job?
This is exactly, and we are talking about impunity and accountability, and this is why the Arab leaders and the Muslim leaders, have to step up and speak up clearly and strongly on this genocide. And the one who has to pay for this is the Israelis, and of course, the Americans, who have been given them an unconditional support, like militarily, diplomatically, even legally. So, and we are not going to mention in terms of communication and PR on the media and on social media and so on. So this is why, again, the Arab leaders and the Muslim leaders are in a historic moment. And as I said, they have the leverage to do that, to pressure the U.S. President, Mr. Donald Trump. And they did it. Actually, they did it on a rush of when we were speaking about the Gaza Strip will be turned into a Rivera in last winter, and that it didn't happen. And last week, because when they want, they can. And so what is making them to be a little bit hesitant or prudent? I'm sure there are other geopolitics and geoeconomics imperatives. But again, fortunately, those imperatives and this dynamic is in favor of those leaders, because what they can put on the table, like challenging the U.S. president, look, your interest is at risk and at stake. So it is, you have to choose. And this is, there are like strong messages they were sending to the U.S. administration, like when you see this rapprochement between the Saudis and the Iranians on one hand, and the Turks on the other side, and also these strategic military deal between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, who has a strong message for the Americans. All these elements, they can shape the U.S. Middle East foreign policy. But up until now, the Americans, they don't have a Middle East foreign policy. They have dictation, and those, they are still giving this full support for the Israelis, who are actually causing them huge damage, not in terms of public image or in international, vis-a-vis the international public opinions, but also in terms of their interest in the region. And this is why the Arab leaders and the Muslim leaders, again, they have to challenge the U.S. president, because especially this administration and President Donald Trump himself, who is actually a businessman and who deals with geopolitics with deals and so on. So if he has the art of the deal and he's looking for against stability, he knows well that business rhymes with stability.
Dr. Toubi, obviously the Israeli mentality is visible, mentality of death, destruction, killing innocent people, unarmed civilians. Now, there are some people in the Israeli government, I'm talking about Bezalel Smotrich and Ben Gvir, the finance minister and the national security minister. They have been asking Netanyahu to completely wipe out the occupied Gaza Strip. Do you think that's going to be possible and Netanyahu is going to listen to them? And secondly, let's say if all parties agree to this peace plan, do you think that Israel could end up violating this plan or the ceasefire or the end of this war?
Actually, to the first question, I mean, all these fascist, messianic government, I mean, is pro-ethnic cleansing and go in and erase Gaza Strip and make it wasteland as it is now. I mean, all the reports we saw, it's like about 80%, if not 90%, of Gaza has become wasteland. So for these government, I mean, he is, again, he doesn't have any clemency vis-a-vis the Palestinian people. And by the way, I mean, they call them, I mean, they don't see them as a human. I don't dare to use what they call, because it's not in our values. But they look at them, of course, not as humans, and they don't see Palestinian people that they have the right to exist by other means. I mean, self-determination for the legitimate right to have the state. And it is clear now, I mean, these government, and actually the majority of the Israelis are not in favor for a Palestinian state.
Dr. Abdunur Toumi, thank you so much for that analysis. It was a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you.
Anews editor Mustafa Kojakanar, thank you so much for being with us in the studios.
Thank you, Mike.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.